أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد.
إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها 4 حرم ذلك الدين القيم فلا تظلموا فيهن أنفسكم وقاتلوا المشركين كافة كما يقاتلونكم كافة واعلموا أن الله مع المتقين إنما النسيء زيادة في الكفر يضل به الذين كفروا يحلونه عاما ويحرمونه عاما ليواطئوا عدة ما حرم الله فيحلوا ما حرم الله زين لهم سوء أعمالهم والله يهدي القوم الكافرين. صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Almighty Allah says, Inna iddat ash-shuhur inda Allah 12 shahran. Verily, the number of the months as ordained by Allah is 12 months. In the book of Allah, in secret tablet, or the Holy Quran, or enjoinment of Allah. Yawma khalaqa as-samawati wal arda, since the day when Allah created the heavens and the earth. Minha arba'atun hurum. There are 4 months, very sacred, forbidden one out of them. Zalika ad-deenul qayyim. This is the straight religion. فَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ أَنفُسَكُمْ. And don't wrong yourself in these months. وَقَاتِلُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ كَافَّةً. And fight against the total infidels, pagans, as they fight you against you altogether. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. And bear in mind and note it well that Allah is always with the pious people. إِنَّمَا النَّسِيءُ زِيَادَةٌ فِي الْكُفْرِ. Verily the delay, the postponement of the month is another incident for the infidelity, for the disbelief. يُذَلُّ بِهِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. Wherewith the people disbelieving or rejecting the truth are misled. يُحِلُّونَهُ عَمًا وَيُحَرِّمُونَهُ عَمًا. And they legalize it in one year and illegalize it in the other year. لِيُوَاطِئُوا إِدَّةَ مَا حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ. So that they make up the number for the month of forbidden month. فَيُحِلُّوا مَا حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ. And they legalize what Allah has illegalized. They try to validate whatever was invalidated by Allah. زُيِّنَ لَهُمْ سُوءُ أَعْمَالِهِمْ. And the evilness of their practice, the evilness of their deed and works was adorned, beautified, decorated. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And Allah does not guide the people rejecting the faith. This is the verbal translation of the passage I recited before you. Here, the logical rationality and contextual study of this passage with the previous one requires certain interpretations. Since the people of the book used to twist, concoct, and distort the verses of Allah, and they were changing and altering the divine message just for their worldly purposes, since they have a coordination and compatibility with the pagans of Mecca. Therefore, these two types of characters and their affairs were mentioned consolidatedly, so that one can understand that when two persons are different in names and in geographical locality, they can be consolidated on account of their coordination in their ideology and in their practice. Since concoction and distortion of the books by the Jews and Christian scholar was a fact, just like the alteration or postponement of the months of Haram, the sacred months, was resembling to each other, coordinating to each other. This was a changing which was introduced by the pagans of Mecca. Their habit was just to postpone the month of Haram, the sacred months. Sacred months are four. One is Zilqa'dah, the other one Zilhajjah, the third one Muharram, the fourth one Rajab. These 3 months are continuous and adjacent to each other, but one is detached from these ones, and that is Rajab. And at the time of retaliation, at the time of robbery, burglary, and fighting, and blood shedding, they used to postpone them according to their own will, since they have got resemblance with the Jews and Christians in this respect, that and the pagans of Makkah used to postpone the month of the sacred months. For instance, they were in need of fighting against any enemy, or they were going to take the retaliatory action against their enemies, and there were some month of Haram,
forbidden to fight,
which was made unlawful for the fighting. They used to postpone it, adjourn it, just to facilitate their activities. And since they were believing in the 4 months as sacred months, respectable months, wherein the fighting was totally unlawful, therefore they used to add any other month in the month of year just to make them up. They used to make it unlawful as a respect, and to make up the number of months of Hurma, sacred months. So this type of alternation and changing would never enable the people to perform the pilgrimage at exact time. Near about more than 30 years, they were unable to perform the pilgrimage at the proper time, until the time came when Nabi Karim ﷺ participated in the month of in the pilgrimage, and then it was exact the date which was necessary to be observed for the performance of the pilgrimage. And as the alteration or changing or concoction or distortion of the text of Gospel or the Pentateuch or the Old Testament was just making one Allah, because it was the power of Allah to alter the celestial book, to change or to abrogate the celestial book is an exclusive right of Allah, because this is interruption in the system of Allah. Interruption in the system of Allah is a type of claim for the divinity. If they had not been interrupting in the right of Allah, they would have never dared to alter or to change or to interpolate or to concoct or forge any part of the celestial book. Since they were interrupting and they were interrupting in the right of Allah and they were exceeding the limits, therefore Allah Rabbul Izzat took them to task, and Allah Rabbul Izzat, Almighty Allah, scrutinized them, and their punishment was also announced. Quran says, as the concoction of the celestial book is interruption in the right of Allah, as the twisting or interpolating in the text of the celestial book is interruption in the rights of Allah or exceeding the limits, in the same way the alteration of system of time, the calendar of Allah, the calendar made by Allah, ordained by Allah, was containing only 12 months, but according to their own necessities, according to their own desires, they added a month in the number of the months just to accommodate their absurdities and their violation of law and their exceeding of the limits and exercising of the power out of their jurisdiction. So this alteration and changing introduced in the system of Allah is interruption in the right of Allah. Therefore these two things were mentioned one after another. Means
no, they're not only after the celestial books, it was after the time. So nature wise, these two types of work can be enlisted in the one catalog. That nature wise, both of the actions can be categorized with the same category. They can be included in the same category because both of the actions are involving the interruption in the rights of Allah, which is not exercisable by the human being. Exercise of the rights of Allah is specified for Allah, and it is not lawful to be enjoyed or to be possessed by the human being. Since the violation of law and the nature of this violation has got a coordination with each other, therefore both of the actions and both of the attitudes were mentioned in the same context. Quran says it was a methodology of Allah, it is a procedure of Allah which was fixed by Allah Rabbul Izzat himself from the very beginning of the creation of the universe up to now. And this type of interruption was totally unprecedented in the previous society, since they were exceeding the limits. Therefore they would be put in the same category as the scholars of the Jews and Christians, and they would be dealt with the same pattern, with the same category, with the same attitude. And there are 4 months which are very sacred out of them. So this decision cannot be made by other than Allah, because sacredness or holiness is a bounty of God which can be granted by Allah himself, and no one else is competent, authorized to give the sacredness to any time. Zalika Deenul Qayyim. So this is a straight religion which cannot be twisted or which cannot be violated. Being a creature, one will have to go straight under the lines prefixed by this religion. وَلَا تَظْلِمُوا فِيهِنَّ أَنفُسَكُمْ, and you should not wrong yourself in these months. Means if you violate the limits, if you violate the law, if you break the discipline, and if you intervene in interrupt in the system of Allah, so it would be a cruelty by yourself on yourself, because you would be penalized for your action and omission. And when a person cannot cause any harm to somebody else, but he has to afford and bear and undergo the result of one's own action, so it is equivalent to cruelty on oneself. Quran says, understand?
Yeah, fully.
وَقَاتِلُ الْمُشْرِكِينَ كَافَةً كَمَا يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ كَافَةً. Since the sacredness of these 4 months were mentioned here, and it was more likely for the infidels, for the pagans, to attack on the Muslims in these very days, because it was lawful for them to postpone and to adjourn the time of sacred months. And since the Muslims were believing in the rigidity of the law, which was not flexible or relaxable for them, therefore being Muslim, one's duty would have been abiding by the time of these months. Therefore it was a danger going to be created for the Muslims by the Muslims. Therefore Allah says this Qatil Mushrikeen Kafa, fight against the pagans. This order is for permissibility, means it doesn't mean fight against the pagans, but you can fight, because after a prohibition, when the permission is allowed, so this type of order is just for permissibility, not for the obligation. Just like I forbid you coming inside, and after a short while I say come in. So this come in is not for obligation, for the necessity. This is just permissibility, is a permission. You can come, and if you don't come, you are not violator of the law, because any order after the prohibition is called permission. The sacredness of the months was a preventive, was a prohibition for the fighting against anyone, because these 4 months was very sacred, inviolable. Their respect was not to be violated. Therefore the Muslims, by their own statement, was abiding to observe their sacredness. Therefore it was open to the non-Muslims to postpone and to adjourn the time of sacred months and to wage a war against the Muslims. Therefore Muslims were advised to wage a war against the pagans, as they can wage a war against you
In case of attack.
in case of attack. Means otherwise, in normal cases, in normal affairs, in normal situations, you are abiding by the sacredness of, by the observation of their reverence, sacredness, and their prestige and their respect. Their respect should be protected and preserved by you. Being a Muslim, it is a duty to preserve their sacredness and their respect. But if they wage a war against you, you are also allowed to wage a war against them. You are allowed to make a counter attack. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, and note it well that Allah is always with the pious people. Means if you are trying to create or to fabricate an excuse to attack against other, so this is against the piety. You must believe that Allah is always with the pious people, means you must wait for the attack on them for the months which are permissible to be fought in, because this type of precaution is also a part of piety. إنما النسي زيادة في الكفر يضل به الذين كفروا يحلونه عاما ويحرمونه عاما ليواتوا إذا ما حرم الله ويحلوا ما حرم الله. Quran says the postponement the delay in the time of month of respect, delay of the sacred months, is also an additional precedent instance of infidelity. This is not a sacredness, this is not a piety, but this is another instance of the infidelity, because this is interruption in the system systematized by Allah. Being human being, one's duty is to bow down before the system of Allah. When a person tries to exceed the limits and interrupt into the authority of Allah, so this is a kind of infidelity which was established by the pagans of Mecca. Quran says this postponement of the sacred months is an additional instance of infidelity wherewith the infidels are misled. This is a misleading for them, and they are being deviated by this addition, because this addition is not their power. This is out of their jurisdiction. This should not be exercised by them. So, if they are exceeding the limit, it means that they are accepting the infidelity, and they have gone the infidel. فَيُحِلُّونَهُ عَمًا وَيُحَرِّمُونَهُ عَمًا. They make it unlawful in 1 year. Make it lawful in 1 year and make it unlawful in the next year. Means if they announce a month to be sacred one in this year, and they lift up the restriction of sacredness and they make it permissible. So this type of legislation to make lawful, to make lawful to be unlawful, or to make unlawful to be lawful. So this type of legislation was referred to in the previous lines, that this is a kind of infidelity which should be avoided by the person who is believing in Allah. Because the tahrim and tahleel, validation or invalidation, and legalization or illegalization, to legalize an unlegalized or to illegalize a legalized thing is exclusive right of Allah, which should be exercised only by Himself. And no one is competent to participate in the special power and the residuary powers of Allah. Residuary powers of Allah. This is
how can he attack your English?
And sometimes prerogative rights are enjoyed by the Holy Prophet. Prerogative rights can be defined in the legal language, which are special right for the sovereign of the country. They are called prerogative rights. Certain prerogative rights are delegated by Allah to His Prophet, which can exclusively be exercised by the Holy Prophet. Just like مَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا, means whatever is given to you by the Holy Prophet, you are obliged to take it. And whatever is prohibited by the Holy Prophet, you are duty bound to avoid it. Otherwise you cannot be included in the Muslim society. So these are prerogative rights which cannot be exercised by any other caliph. For instance, Siddiq Akbar, Farooq Azam, Usman Ghani, Hyder Karar, and other caliphs up to the judgment day are not competent, are not eligible to exercise those powers, because those powers are a prerogative right of the Holy Prophet. As being sovereign of the country, he can exercise them all alone. Quran criticizes and condemns their attitude and their behavior, that they just make a lawful or a permissible month to be unlawful, just to make up for the deficiency of the number of the months. So this type of exercise of power is not suitable, is not apt to them. Therefore, it should be avoided if they believe in Allah and His Apostle, and they should show the penitence for the previous behavior. Allah Karim says, زُيِّنَ لَهُمْ سُوءُ أَعْمَالِهِمْ. The evilness of their deeds and works was adorned, was beautified. This is a philosophy of Islamic ideology. When a person goes away from the limits and commits sins more and more, his heart is blackened, and his contemptible practice and deeds and works does not look to be ugly to him, but he is mostly proud of such a thing. Just one says, I am a person who has been killing the persons, and I have killed 100 persons in my life. I have robbed very big persons. I robbed the millionaires. I robbed the judges, the policemen, the chief constable, etc., etc. So these are highly contemptible and culpable actions, and he is proud of having done such a things, and having done such a thing should not be proud of such a things. So this is beautification of the evilness of the practice. Quran says one should not be proud. This is a decisive sign of his fatality, his disaster. He is just about to be eradicated when he is showing the pride about highness and contemptible and hateful things. Wallahu la yahdil qawm al-kafirin. And Allah does not guide the people rejecting the faith. Means sometimes Allah enables the sinful person to see the destination, to check or to find out the proper way. But when Allah gets annoyed too much, then Allah does not show the right way to such a person. This is the end of my lecture today on this very topic. Inshallah, the rest part of the lecture would be delivered to you, inshallah, in the next meeting. This is Sura Taubah, and from verse number 36 up to the verse number 37. 36 and 36. Two verses was recited here and commented on.